Okay, we're going to start off with the first review on lines. First topic we're going to talk about is finding the slope of a line from a graph. Remember that the slope of a line, we use the letter M to represent slope, and that slope was equal to the rise over the run, or the change in y over the change in x. So if we look at an example, sketch out a graph here. Got a point roughly at 1, 1, and a point at 4, 3. On a line. The sides of our triangle, I'm drawing them as little segment pieces so that you can see the parts. We have a distance of 3 along the base and 2 along the right side. So our slope, our rise over run, our rise is 2, and it's going in the positive direction, and our run is 3. So we get a slope of 2/3. If we look at another example, and we have our coordinate plane again, and a few tick marks here, a few tick marks here. Try to make them as even as possible. It'll help you in seeing what you're looking at. I'm going to start off at 1, 4, or 1, 3. And my next point will be at 2, 1. And so in this case, I have a side here that's going down 2, or a -2 down, and over 1. So in this case, our slope is, our rise is heading down, so it's -2. Our run is 1. That reduces to a -2. The second item we need to talk about is finding slope using 2 points. When we look at this, we'll look at an example. Point -2, 1, and point 6, 7. Okay? The equation for slope is M equals y2 minus y1, or that change in y, over the change in x, x2 minus x1. So to do this, we need to go through and label our points. I always start with the first one, make it x1, y1, and the second point, x2, y2. Then when I go to substitute in to my equation, I just look for the corresponding piece. y2 is 7, minus y1, which was 1, over x2, which is 6, minus x1, which is a negative 2. You'll recall that when we subtract a negative number, that's the same as adding it. So many times you'll see us just hop to making that a plus 2 because it's minus the negative 2. Now we can simplify. 7 minus 1 is 6. 6 plus 2 is 8. And the fraction 6/8 reduces to 3 over 4. We can take a 2 out of both. So our answer is simply m equals 3/4. Let's look at one more example of these. Okay, example 2. I have point -1, comma, 0, and I have point -3, comma, -6. Again, first thing we do is label our points, x1, y1, x2, y2. Write out our equation for slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Substitute in, y2 is a -6, y1 is 0, x2 is a -3, and x1 is a -1, so minus the -1 becomes a positive. -6 minus 0 is -6. -3 plus 1 is a -2. -6 divided by -2, the negatives cancel. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So our answer is m equals 3. Few reminders. Remember that if we have a positive slope, we're going to have our line heading from left to right in an upward direction. If it's a negative slope, our line is going to be heading down from left to right. If we have a horizontal line, and let's give an example, 1, 2, and 4, 2, they have the same y values, and we end up looking like this. When we plug those values in, we get a slope of 0 over 3, which reduces to 0. Horizontal lines have a 0 slope. Vertical lines, and let's use 3 comma 3 and 3 comma 1 have the same x values. So when we look at them, we get a line that runs vertical, and our slope in this case, we will get, we plug that in to the slope formula, we get 2 over 0. Remember, you cannot divide by 0. You can have, in our horizontal case, 0 pieces of a 3-piece pie gives us nothing, but you cannot have 2 pieces of no pie. That's not possible. So that is referred to as undefined. UNDEF is acceptable abbreviation for undefined. The last topic we are going to cover today is the slope-intercept form of a line. Remember, the slope-intercept form is the one we're all familiar with. It's the one we always go back to. Y equals mx plus b, where m is our slope and b is our y-intercept. So if we look at a graph, and I draw in point 0, 1, and I draw in point 1, 3, and I connect my points. That's my line. Looking at this from a graph, we can determine that our slope, m, is a rise of 2 and a run of 1. Okay, so from the graph we can get 2. We can also take the points, use the slope formula, come up with that number as well. And now we got Mr. Miller talking. How great. The y-intercept is simply the point where the line crosses the y-axis. At this case, 0, 1 was the point. The y-intercept is 1. So we have our slope, we have our intercept. We can write out the equation of the line. Y equals that slope 2 times x plus the y-intercept of 1. Okay, one final example on this. Let's look at the graph. This time I'm going to have us in the bottom of the graph, in the third quadrant. And let's say I give point -2 comma 0, which is actually the x-intercept. We'll talk about that in a later video this week. And 0, -3. Scoot over so I can bring in this line fairly well. Okay, our slope of this line, we go down 3 and over 2. So our slope is a -3 for the down and over 2. Again, you can use the slope formula to determine that if you don't want to read it from the graph. Our y-intercept also known as B, is -3, where it crosses the y axis, not the x. Okay? And when we type this in or fill this into our slope intercept form, y equals -3/2 x, and then B is -3. That's it for our first review on lines.